Thank you for joining today's Marketplace Live demo presented by Mitratech. Today we have Corey Greth, Strategic Global Account Executive and Client Manager, and Varun Gai, Senior Solutions Consultant. They'll be doing the presentation today. So thank you, Mitratech, for doing this today, and thank you for joining. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you guys. If you have any questions, please drop those questions in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much for kicking off. I am sharing my screen right now, so if you cannot see it, please let me know. But he's 100% correct. I think today we're going to focus on Mitratech's enterprise legal management platform, TeamConnect, which is the flagship solution across the industry, and more specifically, kind of why legal teams choose TeamConnect today. If we look across the Fortune 100, over 65% these companies rely on Mitratech today to run their legal work at scale. And today we want to show you why. So you're going to see an interactive demo that show how top legal teams manage their matters and spend data across a single connected platform, all built for complexity. We will show you how TeamConnect brings workflows, reporting, and insight together to deliver consistency and control across many different legal organizations inside of one company at a global scale, inside one country, however you're set up. Now we're going to see how TeamConnect is in action from automated intake and embedded AI, which is going to show seamless integrations and purpose-built matter and spend management tools. We're going to learn how teams reduce friction, turn data into actionable insight, and really make smarter decisions faster without adding more work or slowing anybody down in this process. Now, a few bragging points real quick. As we are the industry-leading ELM partner, Mitratech has seen 20% year-over-year growth. If we're focused directly on enterprise legal management solutions inside of Mitratech, we've seen 120% year-over-year growth. We process over $10 billion in legal spend. We have 10,000 law firms partnering with Mitratech through our e-billing portal at a global scale. And really, this comes down to being a comprehensive platform that's kind of for all-in critical business processes, right? So we call it the single source of truth. TeamConnect has a platform approach which offers standardized actionable data and in-process analytics to help drive consistency and enhance visibility across all matter, knowledge, and financial management processes. Now, flexibility inside the solution, global reach, of course, very important, both of those topics. But with the breadth of global companies, that rely on Mitratech's highly configurable interface and flexible support, we have team members with their boots on the ground in 8 countries worldwide. Our team has over 40 years of experience underpinning these world-class enterprise-grade technologies. We're very focused on automation, strategic growth. Mitratech's TeamConnect does improve organizational efficiency by reducing repetitive manual tasks, those daily mundane tasks, through smart, flexible workflow and process automation solutions. TeamConnect is agile enough to scale highly complex environments, right? We can deploy in the cloud, of course, in a hosted environment. We can also deploy on-premise on client servers. Now, TeamConnect is designed, developed, and supported as an on-premise solution, empowering teams to adjust, maintain, and scale the use of the platform. It was originally built from the ground up to address the unique challenges supporting complex global platforms, deployed behind client firewalls. Now, integration, huge topic. We can integrate freely with TeamConnect. Integrating with current technologies, whether it's third-party solutions or homegrown solutions, is key to ensuring business continuity. TeamConnect is a highly scalable platform, that's going to provide an open, published API, advanced web services integration methods to all support integration with virtually any external applications. Another great point is you can expand as needed, expand with your business, your growing enterprise organization. All administrative tasks can be managed via TeamConnect's user-friendly interface, allowing teams to adjust, maintain, and expand the use of the platform without the need for costly vendor or partner support. A huge point on why organizations utilize TeamConnect for decades plus. Now, real quick, I want to take a step back and look at a quick wireframe layout of the platform and why it's so valuable. If you look at Team Connect in the middle and you see the four boxes above that and the four boxes below that, these are going to be kind of your out of the box, just standard capabilities. The four on the exterior are also out of the box, but when we look at what's valuable here is the fact that this is a configurable platform, meaning that, yes, we'll set you up day one of go live for success, but we certainly understand your large enterprise organization, especially global organizations. What is requested of you changes from year to year. And it's very important that the software solution, TeamConnect, can adapt, can be very flexible to this. So with these capabilities that I'm showing on the screen now, it's important to note that these are highly configurable solutions that an administrator trained on the solution, no IT experience, no coding knowledge, can go in and make these changes or adjustments to those business processes inside the tool without having to contact Mitratech. Very flexible, self-sufficient software, and that is why clients utilize this for decades plus. If more specifically, if we look at the four exterior boxes, starting off on the top left, Collaborative Vendor Portal, I mentioned before briefly, this is the e-billing portal connecting to your vendors. Your teams would never utilize this portal. They will stay 100% inside of TeamConnect. And outside counsel doesn't need access to TeamConnect. They just access the portal. We can supply limited privilege licenses to outside counsel if desired, but mainly they will be working directly through this portal. Currently, I believe over 10,000 law firm partners at a global scale. So the most widely used e-billing portal in the industry. Bottom left, legal front door, tap. This is the automation side of TeamConnect, sort of an automated workflow process. Again, highly configurable, something that our clients' teams build themselves. You don't need coding or an IT experience, just trained on the solution. We have legal front door listed because it is one of the most popular, I would say, business cases clients create, again, tailored to your business. This is going to allow internal stakeholders, business professionals to connect with TeamConnect, to connect with the legal team through an enterprise grade structured process. We understand, of course, you don't want to provide licensing for TeamConnect to all the business users, but there's going to be times where they need to work with the data inside of TeamConnect. So this is a perfect way to achieve those goals. And then the two boxes on the far right, the third-party applications and integration. This is a huge part of TeamConnect because, yes, as the central hub for legal and legal operations, we certainly understand that TeamConnect is going to need to speak to third-party tools as well. We have some of the most popular ones listed here, but we've done hundreds of third-party integrations. It's not uncommon for some clients to have upwards of 15 to 20 third-party solutions connected to TeamConnect. Very popular. Service to process. We can easily connect to the CT Corp, CSCs, really anything else with an API. Accounts payable. Of course, if we're going to be accepting bills from vendors through the e-billing portal, we're going to want to connect to your existing account payment system for an expedited, streamlined payment process. DMS, Document Management Solutions. TeamConnect has document management inside of the tool, but we certainly understand at a global scale or even national scale, there's a lot of organizations that already have DMSs across their entire enterprise. So we're not trying to rip that out and change those processes. We can simply have a bidirectional integration with those solutions with TeamConnect. Then also, of course, your Outlook, your Office 365 connections, you're going to have SSO connection as well. Now, let's cover a huge topic today across the whole entire world, not just legal operations, but AI. And what is Mitratech doing with AI? And I would say, more importantly, what are we doing that is different? And how is this going to be actually valuable inside of your day-to-day? So if we look at kind of differentiators, in the marketplace, I would say, like I said, there's no shortage of AI in the market right now. It's popping up everywhere. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense. Everyone is building something, and there's a lot of noise around this. Our approach, I would say, from the beginning has been very deliberate, grounded, really to focus on customer needs. So first we'll focus on the practicality. We work closely with customers in developing AI technology as well as our other solutions to make sure that we deliver kind of real world problem solving technology and that it fits into how the work actually gets done. You'll see that reflected in examples that we'll show you today. And second, we believe that AI is going to be most effective when it's actually paired with human judgment. Again, why we always like to work with clients on these topics. We design our solutions with human in the loop approach, where AI provides recommendations and assistance, but lets the people stay in control. That oversight and collaboration is very critical, especially in high stake environments. Security is also non-negotiable. The information involved here is highly sensitive. Whether you're working on behalf of a corporation, a client, or government agency, protecting confidentiality, maintaining privilege, and ensuring strong security controls, are foundational to how we build and deploy AI. And finally, we recognize that every organization works differently. Configurability matters, of course. AI solutions are designed to adapt to different workflows and policies and ways of working, rather than forcing kind of a one-size-fits-all type of approach. These principles, I would say, these practical solutions, this human-guided AI, strong security, and configurability is what shapes our AI ecosystem and how we differentiate across the marketplace. We continue to push for innovation. Now, I'll transfer over to Varun here. He's going to go a little bit more in depth on kind of what I breached the surface with in terms of AI and the capabilities inside of TeamConnect.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. So Corey gave you our high-level approach of how we are looking at AI and how we're deploying it across the organization. Now, how does that translate to what we're actually doing into the solution and how are we continuing to look at this overall in the future as well? So some of the things that you will see as we move through the demonstration today is captured right here. And other things that we'll cover at the very end of the demonstration today will be more of that vision that we're hearing from our clients. We're getting that immediate feedback and where we're going. Some of the more common things that we're seeing right here that we've brought into our solution, we've already seen extreme ROI for all of the clients that are leveraging it. So one of the examples here I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but one of the things that we've done that's been a really big impact is the non-leads invoice capture that we've done is been a really big win for us and for our clients because it allows you to be able to have all of your boutique firms, your smaller firms, your independent witnesses, people like that are submitting PDFs, invoices to you to be captured in a way into your spend that isn't manual. So essentially, it breaks it down into a non-lead style and allows you to consume it inside of PDF. So you really move to that 100% spend capture overall, whereas you may have been missing that before. Something we're releasing actually in a few days here is around that advanced document management. So around your litigation, your court deadlines, scheduling orders, what it does is it actually automatically ingests all of those things and breaks it out into a way that's consumable by your internal staff. So it automatically assigns deadlines, automatically assigns tasks and appointments. It really brings structure around the entire process. So it really reduces that manual tracking. Nothing's falling through the cracks and causing missed deadlines or having people come in and read it one by one to make sure they're capturing everything. Those two things are going to be pretty impactful here. The matter and spend agents, we'll look at these ambient panels over here in a little bit about being able to capture overall, comparing more of your historical data and trying to understand how it's been impacting your organization, surfacing data really quickly. And we'll take a quick example of how we're able to work with some of that spend data inside the organization with more of that experience that's like you were chatting back and forth. So you're not always having to rely on dashboards, rely on administrators creating these reports, but give your users access to that data in a way that makes sense for them instead of always relying on the administrators to provide it from a top-down view. Awesome. So, Corey, with that, let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration itself. So, what we're going to do as part of the demonstration, as we step through it, is we're going to look at a very high level of what the matter management inside of TeamConnect experience is like. We'll look at how that data gets into the solution overall, and then we'll shift over to more of focusing on the spend and AI piece, spend management and AI piece. As we move through this entire demonstration, keep in mind that everything here is going to be configurable, like Corey had alluded to as we move through the solution and what you're going to see. What you're seeing also is more of that best practice version. So some of our clients that are coming from more manual experiences or something that's not really structured tend to take this on in more of a phased-based approach. So definitely keep in mind that we can configure it in a way that makes sense for your organization with the maturity that you're currently at and can always scale up, like Corey said, and grow with you and continue to mature with you instead of having to grow out of a product like this. And then lastly, as we move through the demonstration today, you will also notice there is a lot of capacity for reporting and providing and surfacing information wherever you are. So the reports, the dashboards, the widgets, the visualization of data you're going to see permeate through the entire solution here as we move through it. So just keep that in mind that we don't have to extricate it as its own thing around reporting, but instead gives you the capacity to understand that data wherever you are operating and your users are operating. So what you see before you now is actually the introduction of TeamConnect, and it's typically where most of your users are going to start. Because it is a roles and permission-based system, we deploy it in a way that makes sense that we're exposing the right data to the right people at the right time. So what you see right now is going to be more around someone like an individual contributor. So, an attorney that needs to understand what is actually coming up, or what types of matters they're working on, or how their different budgets are tracking against the spend that with those matters they're working on, as well as the ability to come in here and quickly add information into the system. So if I needed to create a brand new matter, I can do it right from here, which takes me more into a structured deployment or creation of that matter so that I'm making sure I'm capturing the right data well, the first time around and really reducing that back and forth of just the creation and intake of that matter. Versus if I were to come in here more as a manager, I may want to understand what's happening across my entire team. So this gives me the opportunity to understand, is there anything that's high priority that I need to focus on that my team's working on? And a lot of our clients will also leverage these types of dashboards for things like workload allocation and management of matters. And we hear that a lot as a pain point across all the industry people we talk to and the clients that we talk to is how can we make sure that we're managing the capacity of matters and the workload of our attorneys so that they're staying busy, but also so that they're focusing their time on high value work and not that low value, high time work. So this is going to help drive some of those decisions. The other couple things I'll point out here is not only do we want to make sure that they can see the right information at all times, we want to make sure they can find that right information at all times. And some of the ways we do that is by enabling things like bookmarks, so I can come in here and find the information I'm looking for really quickly, or leveraging what we call our global search here at the top to give us the opportunity to find any piece of data inside the system or any type of record inside the system as well. So this also will include things like searching for key terms, using fuzzy searches and wildcard searches, even if you don't know what you're looking for, as well as looking inside of the content of documents as well. So if we need to surface certain key terms or certain case strategies, things like that, those things can be surfaced. Now, getting the data into the system is just as important as pulling it out via all these reports. So another example, and something that Corey had mentioned as part of that intake element, is being able to expose or layer on the ability for your users that are outside of legal to interact with legal in a capacity that doesn't cause them to come in here to have to create licenses or doesn't expose matter information out to parties it shouldn't be going to. And that's where this legal front door idea comes in and is used in a lot of different capacities in with all of our clients. But everything here is also completely configurable, giving me the opportunity to make sure it's streamlining data as it comes into the system, as well as bringing it in more of a structured format. So some of the most common examples or some of the most common use cases we see sit in this list. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but the idea here is that how can we make a lot of that work that's coming into our onto our attorney's plates more of that self-service element. And this lends itself really well to do stuff, things like that. So for example, if I come into one example here, so things like a self-service NDA. So how can we take some of those standardized templates, some of those high volume, low complexity style documents that my attorneys are working with, and completely take it off the plate of them, of their work, and also add in information in a way that I'm able to standardize the data being captured and show my user as they're filling out what it looks like. And this can go all the way from inception here to signature because of the out-of-the-box integration with Adobe Sign and DocuSign. And now you have it integrate and sitting inside Team Connect. So if the NDA gets violated and you want to pursue any kind of legal action against it, you now have the record available to you from outside the organization, from internal parts of the organization, but still from that end-to-end process. So I can see where it's coming from, how it's flowing, and then if anything needs to happen, what those action items look like for follow-up. This also tends to lend itself to a unique position because our clients are also then, as a phase two or phase three approach with some of these start types of documents, start to be able to create things like predictable variability. So here I can give my counterparties, my users, maybe some ability to change the verbiage in here that's already been pre-approved by legal. So things like governing law or guidance terms or um, length of execution, things like that. So some of those things that have already been approved by legal, you find yourself changing over and over again, a red line change over and over again. This allows you to mitigate some of that right in the forefront. Other use cases that are outside of just the legal service request portal we do also see is to enable or enhance collaboration with your firms. We do also see this portal being leveraged in a way to be able to bring in data from your firms. So things like quick matter status updates or sharing documents with those firms, executing engagement letters. All right, all of that really lends itself to really to good use cases here because it enables you to have all that information pulled into TeamConnect as your single source of truth, as that centralization of data, and then allow you to use that data in capacities that can impact how you're working with those firms. And we'll get to that a little bit later as well. Okay, so jumping back to Team Connect here, when we're actually about to start working on a matter, we can then dive into whatever that matter is. And the other thing to note here is that today we will go through a more of a litigious matter just because it tends to lend itself to be more complex. But Team Connect can capture any type of matter in here and allow you to bring a lot of automation around it as well. So we see transactional matters, we see disputes, we see advice and counsel, real estate matters, right? Whatever that may be, they can all be captured in here because it's just another legal project that has all those different moving parts. Now, inside the matter itself, the first thing we typically are going to see is the matter summary page here. And this is going to be all of those high level important details about that particular matter. So oftentimes we'll see things like the matter description, who the main assignee is on that matter, as well as the ability to track things like key dates, quickly enter additional information, or surface any other pieces of information that might be relevant as at a high level understanding of that matter. So this is another place where our clients will come in to understand, are what types of timekeepers are billing invoices against this particular matter? How am I tracking against spend? How close am I to using up my allocated budget? Those types of things are typically exposed here, but can be whatever piece of information is relevant to you and your organization. As we move down, the next piece here, the general tab, is where some of that automation can come and start to kick in. So because we did say this is an employment matter and it's also litigious, we've categorized it in a couple of ways that allows me to capture details that are useful for those types of matters. So it's only going to expose details as they become relevant instead of inundating your users with information that they aren't going to need. We're not trying to get your attorneys, your users to be data entry stewards. We're trying to get this information into the system so that we can then leverage it in a capacity at a higher scale to be able to make decisions off of that data. So because of the way we approach that, they're only entering the information that's relevant. So they're not having to come in and put information about properties in here because as it's an employment case, or they're not even going to have to add litigation information until it becomes litigious. So those types of things can be configurable in here based off of conditional logic. The other things we see very commonly as well is based off of the type of matter that's coming in. You may have different standard things happen that you're doing manually today that TeamConnect can take the burden off of you for. So, for example, if it becomes a litigious matter, automatically create a folder structure based off of that criteria of what types of documents need to be captured when that matter becomes litigious or things like automatically creating tasks and appointments for standard things that need to happen whenever a matter gets created, right? Those types of things that we're just taking off of your plate that we know are going to happen already. That's typically what's exposed in this general tab. We'll oftentimes also see things like assigning the right people to that matter as soon as it comes in. So if Corey is the one who's always my litigation employment attorney, and then Marcy is going to be his paralegal, it automatically allows me to pull that in to help with some of that workload allocation elements as well. I see there was a quick question. On the matter summary page, are the matter analysis charts TCBI widgets? Yeah, yes, they are. So you're familiar with TeamConnect. Those are TCBI, TeamConnect Business Intelligence widgets. We will see examples a little bit later of some that are not reliant on TCBI. Um, No. So this is available both in on-prem and so is this available only in on-prem or SaaS? It's available both in SaaS and on-prem, and your experience will be the same. The only thing that right as of right now that's only available in the SaaS version is going to be the agentic agent around AI, which we'll cover a little bit later. So, okay. Um, Moving right along in the matter side, I'm not going to drill down too much into this. I just want to touch on assignees and involved here. So this typically tends to be broken out by your internal users. So your attorneys, your paralegals, your legal assistants, anyone like that. And then down here, your involved parties. So anyone else that could be included as part of that particular matter. This becomes important, I think, because you can start to be able to now capture the data or around all of this. So if a particular person or individual has been named multiple times across multiple matters, you now have that audit history and that trail to see where they've been involved in matters. Or if, because this one, as we're looking at litigation, if you include a court as a physical entity of an involved party, we can now see if a certain judge was presiding at that court at the time of settlement. Was it a favorable outcome? Was it not? How much was the settlement amount? Can we leverage that information and then go forward into a case strategy when we know this judge has been assigned, right? That type of information now becomes available to you as part of the overall matter management. I'm not going to go down every single one of these. The rest of them are relatively straightforward. The last piece I do want to touch on is going to be the resolution element. So this I want to bring into scope because it also helps our clients in another element of the automation piece. So what a lot of our clients will do here is as part of the resolution or as part of closing out the matter, what our clients will do is make sure that certain pieces of data are always going to be in place before that matter can be closed out. So this really reduces, again, that friction of going back and capturing that data historically or trying to find out where it exists, but ensuring that all of that happens before a matter can officially be closed out. The other thing that we see very commonly here is sending out a survey automatically, for example, that captures some high-level details from the lead attorney of, hey, around maybe a firm management. So how was it working with this particular firm? Did they adhere to their budget? Were they timely with submitting their invoices? Taking all that information and essentially building profiles or scorecards for those firms which you can then leverage going forward on deciding things like panel status or preferred status, things like that. We'll take a look at an example of what one of those dashboards, how it comes to fruition on the spend side of it, but then using all this data that's matter centric to drive those decisions going forward. The last thing as we close out the matter piece, all this information can be pulled up one more level beyond just the manager side of it. So as we start to look more holistically across the entire organization or across the department, this gives me the opportunity to pull in that data on more that higher scale. So to really understand where are my matters coming from, who's working on those matters, what's the volume of those matters as we work through them with the ability to come in here and see that data as it makes sense to each of my users. So if I want to come in here and understand, okay, well, what's happening actually with all of my IP matters, as I click on that piece of the pie, everything gets filtered down here so I can see who's working on them, how many I'm coming, so how many are coming here. So it really makes me, gives me the ability here to be more proactive instead of always reactive on some of that volume to understand, is there someone I need to pull in last minute or do I need to justify additional headcount because I know I'm going to have this increase in volume. Historically, we've seen it every year. You can start tracking those trends as you start looking year over year. And with these dashboards, they can all be exported or scheduled in a way that's just like an Outlook appointment. So if any of your users or any management or any managers need to have this information, we can schedule it just like we would with an Outlook. So every beginning of every month, beginning of every quarter, send out this dashboard of information automatically to whoever the people are so that they have the information available and they're not having to come in and manually run it every time. Now, as we switch to the spend side of it, taking a little pivot there, so you'll notice that we have an area here around our invoices that we can work on for any that are approved, any that might be pending. And once we're ready to look at and work on all the invoices that are waiting for me, we can switch over to my approvals. So the question earlier was around certain matter charts that were TCBI widgets with the Team Connect Business Intelligence. These ones are not reliant on TeamConnect Business Intelligence. This sits inside of how the invoices operate inside TeamConnect. So here, the idea around this my approvals page is to be able to quickly get a pulse on what I have sitting in my queue, as well as the ability to come in here and quickly find invoices that are relevant to certain data or approve or reject those invoices really quickly. So if I wanted to come in here and see all of my invoices that are sitting under $1,000 and want to do a mass approval of those, this gives me the opportunity to do it really quickly. Or if I want to come in here and see invoices that are related to a particular matter, as I start to type that out, it highlights every invoice that is relevant there and then pulls that information back for me. This is really valuable for some of those high volume, low dollar style invoices. So typically like IP style invoices or, don't really need to dive into those invoices, single line item invoices. This tends to be really good to be able to approve them. For your larger invoices that have your billing guidelines flagged against it or have the opportunity to come in here with hundreds or thousands of line items, I can see that I have a few of those right here that allow me to peek into that invoice to see what's going on. So I can see that there's been some flags here that some of my guidelines have been violated. So really allowed me to dive into the invoice in particular, either from here or again from my bookmarks. But once I'm in the invoice itself, you'll notice that it's broken out in a very similar way as the matter is. So again, from a best practice standpoint, these are some of the things that we see pretty often from how an invoice is broken out. The only thing I'll point out on this page at the high level here is going to be one, the currency. So Team Connect does accommodate all currencies in the world as well as different tax structures. And whether those tax structures apply on the matter level or the invoice level are irrelevant, but really gives you the capacity to capture your spend outside of the US as well as inside the US. And it does the currency conversions, usually through integrations as well. The other thing I'll mention here, the line item warnings is actually based off of your internal billing guidelines. So what we do as part of the implementation is ensure that all your billing guidelines are captured inside of our system. So when any invoice that's submitted by your firms hits the system, they'll be able to flag or automatically adjust or automatically reject different line items or different invoice items. This applies as well to allocating cost centers, to working with alternative fee arrangements instead of rack rates. So whatever it is for your broader spend program, those can be accommodated within TeamConnect. Uh, after the system has scanned the invoice and looked against your billing guidelines, the next thing that happens is an AI review actually goes through the invoice as a second layer before it even gets to your approvers and reviewers. And that AI review, what it really does is it adds a layer of additional coding on top of your UTBMS codes, and we call them internally Mitra codes. But the idea behind this is it's really meant to standardize a lot of those miscellaneous classifications or misclassifications and really give you the crux of what's happening inside of that invoice line item. In this case, you'll notice that it's also flagging block billing. So that's what it's giving me as that insight, and it's reading the actual description of that line item. So it's doing the natural language processing, and then the recommendation is based off of your own internal guidelines. So what do we do if we surface block billing? In this case, it's automatically been adjusted by 50%. The other valuable part of this is that you're then able to take all of those metric codes, those additional layers of classification, and understand, are there compliance issues that we're having with our firms where they're trying to skirt our guidelines? So they're timekeepers classifying things as miscellaneous and saying they took a bus, right, on the description, but you don't allow for travel, so that metric code would identify that for you. So really be able to dive into that as well as understand how often it's happening with your different firms, which firms is it mostly happening with, and understanding on a high level, holistic scale what that looks like. And we'll take a look at that in a second. The only other thing I'll point out here around the invoice itself is that TeamConnect can accommodate one, very often we see integrations with accounts payables, your finance systems, your accounts payable systems, and it'll be a two-way integration. So whenever the invoice is ready to be paid, it gets sent over automatically to finance, and then data that's relevant from there also gets pulled back into TeamConnect. So things like the check number, the check amount, if there was anything withholding, those types of things all get pulled back. So for your purposes, for legal's purposes, we can understand what that is and then also be able to provide it back to the firm as necessary. They do have all of your vendors will have their own portal where they can come in like a dashboard that we've been seeing where they can see payment amounts, they can see whether a line item was accepted or rejected, reasoning behind that. So really collaborate with their firms in a better way without having them chase you down in emails and say, hey, where's my invoice? How much was it paid for? When was it paid? Those types of things are no longer anything you have to worry about. And we do have a team internally at Mitratech that takes care of all the support as well and onboarding of those firms. The last thing I'll mention about the invoice, though, is all of your workflows can also be accommodated here in whatever capacity that looks like. So your approval limits, your authority limits will usually be built into the background here. So we can see how a particular invoice needs to be routed and when it needs to be routed to that person. And of course, the audit history is being captured at any point. So if you need to know who's making those changes, what those changes were when they were made, why they were made, all of that is being captured in the background here. Now, as we take all that information and pull it to that holistic level around reporting, there's a few different examples I'll cover around that. One could be across my overall spend. So, what does it look like across my entire organization, and how is my spend working out here? Where am I typically spending? What are those different spend trends? If I want to understand how it is working with a particular vendor, I can click on that vendor and understand what that profile of that vendor kind of looks like. So, who internally is working on them that typically probably has the best relationship with them? Where are we leveraging them the most? So we can quickly surface that information. When we talk about those different Mitra codes, we can then start to expose that information, standardizing around that compliance to understand, okay, where is it that all these Mitra codes are having to come in and do that reclassification on top of those UTBMS codes? What phase is it happening with? Which of my firms is it happening with? And what is the actual impact financially and hourly internally? So is it causing us to do more work internally every time that reclassification or that additional classification comes in? And if so, can we drill into one particular vendor to understand how does it look like for this vendor? So this looks across all of my vendors and how they're compliant against those particular codes. But if I wanted to come into one particular vendor, because I can leverage these dashboards and this information wherever it's important for my users, I can come to see what my relationship looks like for that one vendor. So now all of a sudden I have a scorecard for that vendor where I can see things like how often I'm leveraging them. Are they adhering to budget? What is their timeliness on those invoices? And we briefly alluded to this a little bit earlier, you'll notice. But the last thing here is, how often are they making the adjustments? And then take all this information, pull it into your panel status, panel idea, and work with it there. The last thing I'll point out here, with all the capacity for all this type of reporting, we do also have the reporting around that's more of that leveraging that AI chat. So here I can ask whatever that question is that I need to be able to ask. In this case, if I want to ask the chat here, what matters a particular firm has billed against in a particular year with exposing the main assignee and the total spend, this gives me leverage on all of my financial data. But what it's doing now here in the background is it's making sure, one, that I have the permissions to view this. So Corey had mentioned that we are very cognizant about how we are coming in here and exposing information to different users. So what this is doing is pulling that, making sure that I have the ability to see this information and then exposing it to me in a way that makes sense and telling me how it got there as well. So if I need to augment my question or re-ask the question or pull this data out, all of a sudden now your users aren't relying on you to be able to ask and get all this data back.
Excellent, Varun. Thank you very much. I know we're tight on time, so I did want to ask if there's any questions or what we can help clarify from today's demonstrations. Looks like we have one question. What does a successful implementation and onboarding typically look like, and how long does it take? So certainly I can provide a time range because depending on integrations and client requirements, this can probably range from implementation, I would say anywhere from 5 to 10 months. Certainly can be shorter, certainly can be less, but that's what we see on average, with probably most clients, including testing, being in that 7, 8, probably 9 month range. A heavy majority of this testing. Successful implementation, it gets kicked off with requirements gathering session. Certainly we'll want to understand that during the initial scope in the very beginning. But it's more of what I would say a white glove treatment, depending on what you're coming from in the past, whether you had a solution, software solution handling some of these processes in the past. What did that look like? What was problematic with that solution? And how are we making it better moving into the TeamConnect solution? That is going to be something that our professional services team will work with your team on more, like I said, white glove kind of treatment, hand-holding process, talking through the automation side of things, what makes sense, what doesn't. And then also the data migration, understanding, are we bringing all the data over? Depending on how old some of the data might be, do we move some data kind of off-border from a solution into a separate database at your organization? So I would say this, it's very much something that is specific to each organization themselves and their goals with the project. Hopefully that answers your question. Knowing every case is different, but what is the general pricing model at Mitratech? Is it user-based? Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. I think the pricing model is very representative of all software out in the marketplace today. It's kind of broken out into user base. It's also broken out into kind of the hosting model, amount of data that needs to be stored inside the solution, different types of features or functionality that's being utilized in the platform, which is very nice because it's a platform we can turn different capabilities on and off, right? Maybe you want to have legal hold inside of TeamConnect, maybe you do not. Maybe you don't need a workflow solution, right? So you're not paying for items that you're not using, and if in the future business requirements change, that can certainly be added. What
Great.
else can I help answer today?
Thank you so much, Corey. Thank you so much, Varun. That was really great. And thank you everyone for joining. One last thing, as a reminder to those that joined, the Ethereum Marketplace does offer a free RFP tool that can be used through the marketplace. So as you're looking for your next ELM, provider, make sure to keep Mitratech in mind, and know that you can run any of your RFPs for free through the Theorem Marketplace. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. Have a great day.